Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 40 of There's No Crying in Crochet. We are in a pre recorded session right now because we are traveling. And so we wanted to make sure that we had some content for you anyway. And in the month of April, we are going to be talking about eco consciousness. So that's what we're going to do today. But let's just do some business first because even though we're pre recording, we got some job to do, right? All right, so click like and subscribe on YouTube for notifications from both Bizzy Crochet and Madam Stitch Crochet. And we didn't introduce ourselves because I'm completely out of sync. But make sure that you follow both of us for more videos and tutorials. And I'm Biz from Bizzy Crochet, by the way, and this is my dear friend.
Well, I would be Debbie from MadameStitch then.
Right. So, and if you've ever seen one of our videos before, you know that this is kind of par for the course. So it's just we just have
But we
fun.
love to talk about crochet, and that's why you're here.
We
So we
we
appreciate
do.
you.
We do. We love to talk about crochet. We love to talk about true crime, and we love to educate you guys on new stuff. And because April tends to be the Earth conscious month because of Earth Day on the 22nd, and it's just kind of become the whole month theme, we decided we were going to go down that rabbit trail this month and do our own different takes on some things concerning the crochet industry. And our first subject that we're going to be talking about today is going to be um, recycling and yarn. And we're also going to be talking about dyeing methods as well, but this is where we're going to start. And so we want to talk about, is recycling and yarn compatible? Does it work hand in
Mhm.
hand? How does it work together? I do have a couple of articles that I've written on my blog a couple of years ago. I think it was 2020, might have been 2021. I don't know. But I did some research on recycled yarns because I was using at the time a recycled yarn that wasn't available anymore. It was discontinued. And I went, oh, geez, now what? Because I want to be able to recommend a recycled yarn to people so that they can do this pattern. So that's what sent me down the trail to find out what is recycled yarn. And in the article, I found out, glass, of course, is not compatible with recycling into yarn. Paper is not compatible into recycling into yarn. You're like an egg carton, that's like an end user piece of cardboard or paper because after that it just degrades. But plastic is like the be all and the end all in the recycle community because it has the ability to be so many things. And I'm just going to bring up real quick recycled PET yarn, and that is polyethylene terephthalate, which is a soft plastic that can be used in injection molds. So think water bottles and soda bottles. Have you ever used any recycled yarns?
Well, without doing a whole lot of research into it to make sure that what I was getting was
Mhm,
recycled, um, I have used recycled cottons.
mhm,
Um, I think what they do in recycled cottons is they take fibers that are either left over from the processing of
mhm,
the other yarns that they use, or they take some that they've already made and they recycle that into a new form.
mhm,
Um, but it's mostly cotton because that
mhm.
has fibers that are pretty sturdy, I think.
Yeah.
And they're a little rougher. They don't have a lot of softness and drape to them, so they're perfect for things that get lots of use,
Mhm,
like placemats you might use outside, coasters, that sort of thing.
mhm.
So I have to admit that I haven't spent a lot of time researching recycled yarns,
Mhm.
but recycling in yarn is so much bigger than just finding a fiber that has been created out of a recycled um, material.
It is for sure. All right. So I'm just gonna read from my blog post just because I can't remember everything that's in there. Let's see. In this particular paragraph, plastic is the king of all recyclables. That's my estimation, mostly because it has the most varied uses. And according to an article by treehugger.com, it can be reprocessed at least 10 times. Unfortunately, like glass, not every type of plastic is recyclable, but what we as consumers use is recyclable, like plastic bottles for our drinking water and sodas and stuff like that. And not only can we use them, in their current state, like you can make things out of the plastic bottles, but it can also be shredded into tiny bits and melted into something like plastic packaging, corrugated shipping boxes, plastic furniture, sleeping bags, clothing, shoes, and yarn. And so there is yarn that it has been used by plastic is typically in an acrylic setting.
Mhm.
There is, let's see, I have a couple of places. Webb's has a big list of recycled yarns. Loops and Thread Eco Cozy is a recycled yarn. You can get that through Michael's. Scapes has Terrazzo, which is a recycled yarn. There is but and so there's quite a few places that you can go there. And I just discovered one at Lion Brand. It's called the Basic Stitch Antimicrobial Yarn. And they base their recycled yarn on the GRS, which is the Global Recycling Standard. And they also have, which is recycled polyester. And they
Mm.
add something called Amicor, which creates a barrier or a protection against odors, allergens, and bacteria up to 100 washes. So, I mean, there's quite a variety of different kinds of recycled yarns that are out there that you can use. Now, I have found that some cotton does use a little bit of that PET. The one that I used for my project was called Blue Ocean, and it is by a company called, hang on, I gotta go find it. Svart, I believe it is. I could be
Mhm.
wrong.
Yep.
Yeah,
Svarta ferret
Svarta
garn.
Ferret yarn. Yeah, it's a Swedish yarn
Mhm.
producer. They don't make that yarn anymore, unfortunately, because it was so nice. And it was relatively cheap to use. And it was made with a little bit of that plastic in there, but it wasn't hard or harsh or scratchy or anything like that. Once you got into using it, it was a little bit stiffer maybe than like the
Mhm.
cotton we would normally buy, but it wasn't unpleasant. And so that you can find it in a variety of different mixes as far as like how it's not just acrylic and it's not, and sometimes cotton yarn isn't just cotton yarn. And
Mhm.
that you have a brand that you found that they go even a step further as far as their organic
Right. So I
offerings.
I don't I don't remember what the it might have been paint box or something like that, but there's a label that the yarn company will include that looks like a green teardrop with
Mm,
OEKO text. It's a
okay.
it's a standard. It's a company that gives its stamp of approval when certain standards have been met according to recycling and organic and all of that stuff. And the organic
Mhm.
cotton that I used, I wish I had the name of it. The organic cotton certification offers verification from farm to product.
Mm.
So that's
Oh,
something
that's
that
nice.
you really need to. There's more to it, but I want to just interject that it's not just about the fibers; it's the process. It's also
Yes.
what do they have to do to get there? Does it cause environmental damage to get there? And I think we'll talk about that a little more when we get to dyeing yarns,
Yes.
but it also says products bearing this label have been tested for the use of genetically modified organisms, which is GMOs, and
Yep.
harmful substances. So recycling isn't as pretty as it sounds. You have to be sort of critical and do your research about
Yeah.
how did that recycled yarn get there and what had to happen to make it get the label of recycled. So that label of OEKO, it might be OCO, I don't know. I never heard anybody say it, but
Yeah.
Ocotext, Tex with TX, there's a standard for yarns called Standard 100, and then there's one called Made in Green, which identifies textiles and leather goods tested for harmful substances and which have
Hmm.
been manufactured under sustainable and socially responsible conditions. So
Okay.
there are a lot of things that go into
Mhm.
assessing whether you're actually helping the environment because it's so much broader than just I'm using a yarn that's been recycled.
So let's get right into that because there, we've talked about there's a variety of things out there, and I think
Mhm.
most of us have been exposed to or heard about, or like we've seen an advertisement somewhere. Oh, this is recycled yarn, and there are people who are like, oh, we only use this. So you can be as bougie as you want where this is concerned. However, I want to bring it back down to what is this really doing to our environment? Now, I am not what you would call an environmentalist. I am not one of these people that, like I don't volunteer to go pick up garbage on the side of the road. I take care of my space. I do believe that we should be good stewards, that kind of stuff. With this earth that we've been given, we've only got so much space. We need to treat it well. And in having that kind of personality about the eco system, that's where I'm coming from. Is, are we being good stewards with what we have? And as I was researching this, it kind of feels like there's a potential for it not to be all that amazing. So I'm going to read once again from that article. Is recycled PET or PET yarn the eco bomb that it feels like it should be? On the one hand, we think, yay, recycled fibers. I'm doing something to help the environment. But there was an article that I read by Wolkat, WOLKAT.com. It's a recycled textile manufacturer based in the Netherlands. And they point to a different problem concerning recycled PET yarns in our textiles, which, that's yarn is part of that industry, where we might be delaying the landfills getting filled up with our plastic bottles and all of that kind of stuff, and it leaching into the environment and hurting our water systems and all that kind of stuff. We're delaying it, but we're not eliminating it,
Right,
because once your textile has outlasted its usefulness, it still ends up in the garbage, and it still ends up in a landfill somewhere that can take 70 to 450 years to degrade. Now, this particular recycled textile manufacturer does something called a closed loop recycling, which means they recycle already recycled fibers. So when I was doing the whole yarn research, I'm like, oh, okay, well, but yarn, is it recyclable? No, yarn is not recyclable. Yarn is kind of like the egg carton of the plastic
mhm.
world. It's the end piece.
The
You
end,
can't
yeah,
go beyond that. And so that's one of the reasons why you and I talk so much about use your scraps, use
mhm,
your stash, be a good steward of what you have, because to just throw it out is the same thing as us throwing out a water bottle.
right,
It literally is exactly the same thing. It's just going to end up in a landfill somewhere.
right, and I like us to think too about how the process plays out. Is it done in a sustainable way? Is it does how does the process itself of making that
Mhm.
yarn harm our environment? Does it?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
not just ending up in a landfill, but it's also the start to finish. Now, I'm not
Yes.
sure that there's a way for us to know that, but we do have a few tools to start looking for, and one of them is
Mhm.
the PET label or the
Mhm.
OEKO text label.
Yes.
Um, seeing if I don't think they're very common. They're
Mm.
not necessarily mainstream yarns, but they are out there. And so
Mhm.
if that helps the environment in some small way, I do think
Mhm.
we owe it to ourselves to do what little we can or as much as we can
Mhm.
to help the environment in those small ways.
Oh, for sure. I completely agree with you on that, because even though this feels very doomy and gloomy, like, oh God, now I'm going to have to stop crocheting because it's actually harming the environment. Okay, well, these textiles, these yarns, these things are going to be produced whether you buy them or not.
Right.
So I look at it and I go, okay, well, it might be another 40 or 50 years before those skeins of yarn end up in a landfill. And I look at it as what can I do right now? Because
Mhm.
yesterday's already gone. We can't fix that.
Right.
Tomorrow has its own troubles. Let's look at today. What can I do today to make a difference? As opposed to getting overwhelmed by the whole idea of it. Now, can we be more eco conscious? Absolutely. Because we're going to talk about you've been talking about the making of the yarn being the kind of is that the bad part? So, how does the dyeing industry affect the environment? So that is also something I've done an article on, and how does dyeing yarn, because we all love these beautiful saturated colors, and dyeing yarn has a specific set of things that it does. And I'm just going to pop over real quick and get that article because you have to use, hang on, I got to find it. Doop doo 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 doo. And here we go. All right. So I have it on here, the list. What does it say? All right. So you prepare the fabric by cleaning it of anything that might keep the dyes from penetrating the fibers. And there are various preparations depending on the type of fiber you're using. Some of them require hydrogen peroxide and bleach treatments.
So
Next,
chemicals.
chemicals. So next,
Mhm.
you apply the dye. And all dyes require a mordant, which is a substance used to fix the dyes to the fibers. The combination of dye and fiber determines what type of mordant you are going to use to achieve a certain color. The dye goes into the water bath, and eventually so does the fiber. And then it's the finishing. In the industrial version of this, they will apply a cocktail of chemicals aimed at increasing the quality of the fiber. There are heat and steam treatments, ultrasonic treatments, liposomes, and all sorts of ways of finishing off the dyeing process. It just depends on what the fiber is, what the color is, and what its intended use is for. And all of it uses a ton of water.
Lots of water.
It's
Lots of water.
water in every single step.
Mhm.
And each time the fabric is exposed to a separate bath, it uses 5 to 10 times its own weight in water. And it's actually the washing baths that create the greatest harm because that water has to go somewhere. And a lot of companies just dump their toxins straight into the water streams, depending on where you are. And so this is where the EPA and all of that comes into play. I do believe firmly that we do need to protect our waterways because what you kill off by introducing all of these toxins and these dyes, because the dyes don't just settle to the bottom, they make the water impenetrable to the sun. So it kills off the algae, it kills off the greenery, it kills off everything that lives on the bottom of the water, and eventually kills off the fish because you've killed off their food. The
Mhm.
oxygen doesn't move in the water anymore. So it makes dead space. Sorry, that was a really
Yeah.
long speech.
No, 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 that sounds very dire. So you hear all of that and it makes you wonder, well, what am I able to do about that process? Because I'm
Mhm,
a I'm a big fan of indie dyers. I've watched their
mhm,
videos of them pouring the chemicals on, pouring the dyes on. They have to wear masks to protect their breathing systems from from the chemicals from the fumes. And
mhm,
it never occurred to me until we started
mhm,
talking about it that it's really detrimental to the environment.
mhm.
And how do we fix that? I'm not sure you and I have an answer to fix it, but I think being aware of it helps us make informed decisions
Yes,
about where and how we buy our yarn.
yes, for sure. And honestly, I think it's less the small indie dyers that are, like, harming the environment. It might not be good, but it's not, like, It's not killing entire ecosystems in their
Right.
backyard.
It's the big
It's the
industrial
big
yarn
industrial dyers that it's not just yarn. It's the entire,
textiles. Yeah.
textiles and fabrics and everything.
Mhm.
Your blue jeans, your shirts, your everything gets a dye, and so, um, it's everywhere. Like, maybe this is just an aha moment for somebody to go, "Oh gosh, you know,
Yeah.
I need to be a little bit more aware of where that's coming from." So, not every country has the same rules in place to protect their environment. So you're going to find some of the less. Now we are considered a first world country, and our EPA works very hard to make sure that our waterways, etc., are not being absolutely destroyed. And but there are countries in like third world countries that don't have those same kinds of things in place, and their ecosystems are being decimated by
Mhm.
this kind of stuff. So sometimes it also comes down to where you're buying your stuff from. And I know
Right.
that can be kind of controversial, and I'm not trying to tell you that you can't. I'm just wanting you to be aware.
I think that's most of the battle for us because this is one area that we don't have a lot of say in how
Mhm.
this happens. But the say that we do have is choosing yarns that we feel we've done the research maybe, or we
Mhm.
know that these companies are being a little more eco-conscious than
Mhm.
others, so we're going to support them and money
Mhm.
talks.
Yes. Now, there is a yarn company that I absolutely love. It's called Good Loops Yarn, and their
Mhm,
dyeing facility is based in South Africa. And it is actually something where they're extremely careful how they reuse their waters and things of that nature
mhm,
to reduce the impact on their environment, but it also creates jobs for local workers. And I've used their yarn, beautiful, beautiful yarn. It always smells so amazing. I don't know what they
mhm.
use, but their dyes are all natural, and they've got a nice variety of like silks and cottons and things of that nature. So and they have I know that they're distributors. There are distributors here in the States, so it doesn't take a year and a day to get their yarn either. So, but Good Loops Yarn is a really great place to find a really eco-friendly, what is the word I'm looking for? Responsible dye manufacturers. They've got on their website, they've got a whole
Mhm.
explanation of how they do it.
I've actually met the owners, a long
Mm,
time ago. They came to CGOA, a conference,
cool.
and I met them and talked to them, and I've used their yarns.
Hmm.
Um, they have one called Eco Fusion that is just one of the most gorgeous yarns
I have some on my
ever,
shelf right now. I know.
ever.
Love
I
it.
still have some. They do tend to be a little pricey, but I don't mind spending that money because of all the reasons that you talked about. This is one example of a company that's not
Mhm.
only doing great things for the environment, but also for the community where that
Right.
manufacturing happens. And there are other companies around the world that
There are.
support local women, men too, in these industries and produce products that are just absolutely gorgeous and worth every penny. I highly
Yes.
recommend Good Loops. I love their stuff.
Yeah. And we're not saying all of these things. The eco-conscious part of our podcast is not meant to make people feel bad about what they are using, because you know what? My yarn shelves are
Well, yeah, I mean, right
filled with
there,
the stuff
all
that,
of that. Yeah, it's
you
not
know.
like we're the standard bearers and you should follow our example. Um, yeah, I
It's like
know,
drink
but
out of my plastic bottle. Yeah, I know.
right. Um, but Biz is absolutely correct. The knowledge helps you make informed decisions
Yeah.
when you can. You know, your
Yeah.
budget has to determine what you can buy, your location has to determine what you buy. But
Mhm.
knowing what's behind the yarn actually helps. It does help the environment because you're
Mhm.
starting to make some informed decisions. And that's really all I
Mhm.
think we can ask.
Well, and some people, it isn't going to make a hill of beans one way or the other. They're going to be like, hey, I'm going to use what I use. I've got to use what's affordable to me. Absolutely, everybody does.
Yep.
And then there are going to be people who are gonna be like, "Holy cow, that it does something on the inside." So, whoever you are in this scenario, it's okay. We're not
Mhm.
judging anybody because we use it too. Um, we just I just wanna try and do what I can do now. And that's so going back to what I had said, that's kind of why when you and I talk about our different kinds of patterns, um, I really lean into sustainability, eco-friendliness, using up your stash, being a good steward, because I don't want to be one of the people that is an overuser.
Mhm.
But that's my personal conviction. It doesn't
Right.
mean it's everybody's.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. I will say that since organizing my yarn in that beautiful
Mm,
space behind me,
yes,
I am now shopping my own stash,
that's awesome.
right? And the memories blanket helped us to use up scraps. I'm trying not to order yarn unless I have to for
I
a
know.
specific project. Right. So Biz and I will have projects through the year that are either collaborations with yarn companies or with other designers that require us to buy more yarn
Yeah.
because that's what the design is asking for.
Mhm.
But as a general rule, both of us try to make things, design things. You'll find in my blog post about cowls. I love cowls because I will find a yarn that I've bought and put it aside and
Mhm.
then make sure that I shop that stash instead of
Mhm.
buying new. It
Mhm.
doesn't always work that way, but that's what we're trying to help you um, to make those kinds of decisions so that we're
Mhm.
being better stewards of the resources that we have.
Yeah. Yep, and this is just to get you thinking about it. Really, that's all it's
Exactly.
for.
No judgment zone. Do
No.
your thing, but now you know
Yep.
some of the things behind yarn.
Kind of like that I don't remember what TV channel it was, The Star, More You Know. Was that NBC or something like that?
I don't know, was that NBC or or CBS? I don't know.
I don't really remember. But yeah, it's all about learning stuff. So, like I said before, this month is all about eco consciousness, and we are going to be having a couple of more, couple more podcasts this month that are going to deal with different eco questions. So,
What let's see, what are we gonna talk about? We're gonna talk about, how to be more eco-conscious in your crochet, and we're
mhm,
gonna base that on some things that we learn about Earth Day and how we can apply that to how we crochet. And
mhm,
then Biz is gonna host the last one where we're gonna talk about recycle, reuse, reduce in
mhm,
crochet and
reusable fabric.
how we can use up yarn scraps and projects that you can use that can replace. I'm gonna give you
Yes.
a little teaser. If
Mhm.
you've ever seen people do Swiffer pads, crochet
Uh-huh.
Swiffer pads,
Mhm.
that's the kind of stuff we're gonna talk about, and
Yes.
it may even inspire me before that episode goes up, Biz, to design a Swiffer pad because I use them all the time.
Oh, do you? I
I
gotta
think
you know what? I think I have a Swiffer base. I really should do some of those.
you know what? Maybe that's a challenge for us to do for the
Yeah.
last episode of April, because that whole shelf right there, that's cotton yarn.
Oh, nice.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect for Swiffer pads, right?
Yes. I've
Mhm.
got a small stash that I could probably make one with. I'm so low on cotton yarn.
But you could do multicolors. I challenge you.
Yes.
I know.
That'd be
See?
so fun.
All right.
Yes.
But that will be the last episode of April,
Yeah.
of
So
our
hopefully you learned something and hopefully you'll stick around for the later ones too.
absolutely. We're excited to share all this stuff with you.
And next week we're going to be doing oh hello, crochet
Crochet
skills
skills.
about a not controversy subject where we're talking about repeats. So hopefully you'll be here for that one as well.
We hope so.
All right. So, all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye. I hope that you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. If you have anything to say, any questions, make sure that you leave a comment for us, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm leaving a message on my message machine. Leave your number at the beep.
Oh, please don't leave your number in the
Please
comments,
don't leave
but
your number at the beep.
yeah.
It's not safe. All right. You guys have an awesome day, and we will see you next week.